What's going on, guys? Let's talk about one of my favorite wintertime baits, and that is going to be a jig. I have two specific styles that I want to talk about, but what I'm going to do is break down some of the modifications that I do to my favorite jigs that you can apply to your favorite jigs to catch more fish this wintertime and have more success out there on the water. So let's break it down right now. Okay, so let's talk jig modifications. So I'm going to start with the two jigs that I like to throw and why I like to throw them. I like a bigger style jig, which is my version is the 6 Sense Hybrid. It does a good job for me because it has a stiffer weed guard and I can throw it in more places. I can throw it around wood, I can throw it around big laydowns, because let's face it, this time of year, if you're fishing a jig, you're fishing it on 45-degree banks with laydowns, you're fishing it on riprap on a bridge, or you're fishing it on deep cover, you know, points, that kind of thing. You're fishing it with deep water access. And so I like one bait that I can throw in and out of wood and cover. So I like one that has a bigger profile, meatier, that has a stiffer weed guard that I don't have to worry about it getting hung up. And I'll have my jigs in these trailers that I'm going to talk about linked below, but that's my go-to for my big jig. The next jig that I have is this Bass Patrol Finesse Football jig, and I like this one because it has a lead head, so the head is bigger on it, so it goes through rock better. It has a light wire weed guard, but just stiff enough to go through some stuff, right? It's not going to get hung up on every laydown or every stick that's down there, but it's finessey enough that I can throw it on like 10 to 15 pound P-line tactical fluorocarbon. It's got a bulky skirt on it, so it does a great job at imitating a crawfish, and that's my deeper style jig. That's the one that I'm going to throw on deeper points, on rocky banks. If I'm fishing for smallmouth, if the lake that I'm fishing has a lot of smallmouth in it, that's the one I'm going to go to. I fish this one on bluffs a lot. It does a great job. So those are the two, and those are the two reasons why I like to fish them. Now, let's talk about what I do to these two jigs that help me get more bites in the wintertime. The first thing that I want to talk about is going to be the trailers that you put on your jigs. Might not seem like a super important deal because in the summertime, it's really not. You know, springtime you can get away with it, fall you can get away with it, but wintertime, fish slow down and they're very picky because they only eat what they have to survive, right? They're not out eating there to grow, they're eating to just stay where they are. They're not trying to feed a ton, they're eating what they have to. And so bigger fish have to eat a little bit more, which is why we catch bigger fish in the wintertime. And so the two trailers that I like is the first one is a Yamamoto double tail grub. Those grubs do a great job with very little movement of the jig. They'll be back there just curling very, very slowly. As slow as you're dragging that jig, they're still kind of doing something. And so it gives you great secondary action. But even if you pull the jig fast, they don't overwork. They'll just curl a little bit faster. You know, they don't overwork a jig, which is what I absolutely love. You can even go to a single tail grub, but I really love that double tail grub because it just does a better crayfish representation, right? The other trailers that I like are beaver style trailers or chunk style trailers. Trailers that have very little action overall and do more gliding through the water than they do flailing around, because as that water cools off, everything else in the water cools down just like it. So the bass are slower like we talked about, and the crayfish are slower. A lot of them go under rocks and stuff to hibernate. Bait fish is slower. All the bugs on the bottom are slower. And so you kind of want to emulate that in the jigs you're throwing. So my bulkier style jigs, I like to throw, this is a palmetto bug or a batwing. Those are the two that I like because the batwing, as you can see, is just your stereotypical chunk style trailer, and that palmetto bug is a beaver style trailer. And the beaver style trailer gives the jig a bigger overall look. You know, it fills that body up, which is huge. I like having a bulky style jig. So when I'm flipping bluff walls or I'm flipping laydowns, that jig has more of a presence going through the water and it slows the action of it down. You know, the thinner the trailer you have on there, the faster it goes through the water. And so on my big jig, I like it to be bulky so it kind of just, you know, goes through there, but it doesn't like go through there, which is why I like that. Now, using those two trailers is great, but the action that you give them is really helps you catch more fish in the wintertime. So a lot of times in the summertime when I'm fishing a jig, I'm hopping it, I'm pulling it faster, I might reel it a little bit. Fall and wintertime, I'm doing more dragging. More and more dragging. The slower, the better, because those fish are really in a funk. You know, they're not eating a lot like we talked about, so I'm going to drag them a lot more. Now, if I get them stuck or I hit something, I'll hop it. But I'm not going to I'm just going to give it a nice little hop because those fish will just kind of come over, follow that jig, and then when you hop it, they'll kick up and they'll just kind of suck it in as it gets right there. So it's all about the action that you give that jig, pairing it with the trailers, and using the right jigs at the right times when you're out there. So this is my deeper water, my points, etc., my bluff walls. This is going to be my laydowns, my bluff walls if there's a lot of largemouth in the lake, my cover style jig. So keep those jig tips in mind when you're out there on the water. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow on with the content. But God bless you guys, and I hope to see you in the next video.